if I film you guys? I'm with the Associated Press.
That's fine, yep.
So you've heard of the different walls that have formed at the protests downtown. Here in Portland, there's the Wall of Moms, of course, the Wall of Dads, the Wall of Vets, Wall of Nurses, healthcare workers. Well, now there's a Wall of Artists. We're getting together Saturdays, 6 p.m., Chapman Square, Portland, Oregon, downtown. I should say, welcome to TraegerMethod Oil Painting, episode 13. Yeah, the Wall of Artists experience last weekend was fantastic. About 15 of us showed up. 6 p.m. Stayed till it got dark. I didn't bring a light, so I couldn't really work after dark. The Night Painter, at The Night Painter, aka Johnny Luziski, kind of spearheaded this movement. He's been down there at the protest painting most days and nights. I did a little, I think episode 12 was an impressionistic look at the protest that featured Johnny. But yeah, it was wonderful to get down there and meet other artists, see people creating in public, get to see the activist community enjoying the art. I think seeing artists on hand working adds to the sense that, you know, we're on the good side. We're on the side of humanity. We're on the side of the people. We got the art, we got the music, we got the culture. What do they have? State-sponsored violence. Of course, the feds pulled out of Portland. You know, they said they'd be here through October. We'll never leave until the terrorist threat is neutralized. And then like 3 days later, oh, we're pulling out. Of course, you know, we have no idea to what extent they're actually pulled out. You know, they could be here doing surveillance on activist communities, coordinating with the Portland Police Bureau, the state police, who knows. You know, here in Portland, we got the Portland Police Bureau, that's what our police department is called, the PPB, and they are, you know, just like the feds in terms of their brutality and animus towards the activist community here. They've changed tactics up. Chapman Square, Lansdowne Square are, you know, the sites of these, you know, the famous quote-unquote Portland protests. That area down there is actually pretty mellow now. You know, the cops, as soon as the feds left, it just relaxed. There's no more tear gas. There's no more crazy running street battles. And instead, what's happening is the Portland Police Bureau is attacking marches happening up in the neighborhoods of Portland, North Portland, Southeast. Of course, in the right-wing propaganda sphere, this is being portrayed as anarchists attacking the suburbs, which is not even remotely true. These are marches happening in central Portland neighborhoods, inner Portland. And the marches have been set upon by large, well-armed and armored groups of riot cops. What they've been doing is they'll announce, this is an illegal gathering, you must disperse, and within a half hour, then about 10 minutes later, they wade in and start billy clubbing and pepper spraying the marchers, who then flee into the neighborhoods to escape the police assault. And that is what is portrayed as them, quote unquote, attacking the suburbs. There have been reports that water bottles, plastic bottles, have been thrown. That's what justifies the police assault. A good friend of mine was with a group of mothers attending the march. It would have been, I think, last Saturday. And she's a mother of 3. A friend of mine going back about 20 years, who was recently activated by what she had seen going on in her neighborhood. She lives just a few blocks from the sheriff's station where some of the demonstrations have happened. I've been to a couple over there on Burnside. Again, inner Portland. So she was motivated seeing these marches happening by her house, so she went out to this one. She saw a flyer in her neighborhood of a mom's group that would meet up before the march. So she got in touch with them and joined them. So on Saturday, this mom's march, they were a part of this larger march when the police declared the gathering an illegal gathering. And she said as the cops were attacking the marchers, she and the other moms, they gathered together, huddled. A bunch of white women trying to protect a couple black women who were amongst them from the police assault. Use your privilege, that whole idea. And then she said what happened was a police officer walked up to her very calmly, knelt down, and then pepper sprayed her directly in the face at point blank range. That is a person whose tax dollar, we're paying for that person's salary to kneel down and blast a chemical spray into a person's face who is doing absolutely nothing, huddling, who is out expressing her opposition to racism and systemic racism in policing. That's what got her pepper sprayed in the face. So what she did, and I love this, the next day she went over to the police station, which again, like I said, is 4 blocks from her house. And she took her 3 kids, 2 teenagers and a 4-year-old. And they just stood there. And the cops were outside guarding the station. And she just, asked them, did you pepper spray me? Would you apologize? Did you beat me? And she said of the cops, she made direct eye contact with each one of them, she told me. And she said of the dozen or so cops, she said maybe 3 of them looked embarrassed, remorseful. Few looked kind of smirky. It's tough, It really is. I was thinking about the slogan that you hear. There's slogans that you hear commonly and things you see written around Portland a lot, spray paint. One of them, of course, is ACAB. It's the term that has an origin in English, British culture. All cops are bastards. ACAB. My friend, who I'm talking about, she also said she never liked that. She said, I hate that. I was trying to figure out why I hate that slogan, all cops are bastards. And she said, for one thing, she doesn't like it because it's name calling. There's nothing enlightening about it. And she says, I teach my kids, I taught my kids, and I teach my kids, name calling is not a good thing. It's a weak protest. So I don't like all cops are bastards. And I understand that. And yeah, painting any group of people as all of them are one thing, it doesn't feel right. And I feel like the new, or not the new, another motto that makes more sense to me is no good cops in a racist system. That's a chant that you also hear at these marches. No good cops in a racist system. And that actually makes more sense to me because, of course, in any police force, you're going to have really good cops and really bad cops and a bunch in between. Good cops, good intentions, they want to help, they want to direct people to services, they are looking out for the vulnerable, trying to be fair and reasonable towards people they encounter. The bad cops delighting in abusing their power, hurting, injuring people, threatening, scaring, But here's the thing, that makes no good cops in a racist system that bears that out. Like ProPublica, or ProPublica as it's called sometimes. I call it ProPublica, the investigative journalism organization. They recently got into the records of citizen complaints against the New York Police Department. It was a sealed, protected record of citizen complaints. Why it was sealed? Yeah, that's the problem right there. It shouldn't have ever been sealed. But anyways, they got a hold of it and were able to look at the incidents of citizen complaints against cops in New York. And what they found was, maybe these numbers are wrong. This is what I remember. It was there's something like 36,000 cops in New York. Of those, most have no complaints. But, something like 3 out of 10 have 1 or 2 complaints against them. But then they were saying that there's about 4,000 cops of those 36,000 who have tons of complaints, 20, 30 complaints over the course of their careers. So 4,000 cops out of 36,000 with tons of complaints. And here's the reason there's no good cops in a racist system. Because those 4,000 cops, their records were hidden of complaints. They haven't faced disciplinary charges. They're not reported by their fellow cops. They're protected by the system, and they're protected by the blue wall of silence, which police reformer Frank Serpico of the famous Serpico story, the movie with Al Pacino, you may know. He was a cop that was set up by his fellow police officers for, reporting corruption and criminality amongst the cops. He was set up to die, left to die by them. And Frank Serpico says, that's the issue, is this blue wall of silence, he says, amongst the cops is much stronger and more cohesive than, say, the mafia's code of omerta was back then in the 70s. And it's still true today. Cops look out for cops. Cops protect cops. Cops protect bad cops. They protect good cops. They protect all cops. They put themselves, their fellow officers, their fellow cops above the public good. The system protects racist cops, violent cops. The system is inherently racist. So it needs to be changed, it needs to be reformed, it needs to be dismantled. Do I know what it's supposed to look like in the future? I don't know. No. I mean, I have a vague sense of there would be armed police, of course, to deal with situations that need that response. But the vast majority of things that the police do could be handled by people without guns. Mental health checks, overdoses, traffic stops, investigations, follow-ups on burglaries. What percentage of police activities require a gun? I don't know, but I don't think it's very many. Police unions, of course. And it's becoming more and more clear too that this is a racket, just like the military-industrial complex. The police-industrial complex is also a racket. It's about money making. These guys make so much money with overtime. And these unions are like governments unto themselves, and the police departments are like governments separate from the amount of power they have. It's like it's a shadow government. And then you can, of course, go into the whole idea that this is just a security service for property owners, to keep property values up. It's the main reason they're so incredibly well funded when all other social agencies and services in America are completely threadbare. The cupboard's bare. There's no money for health. There's no money for education. There's no money for anything. But the cops have, endless, bottomless toy box of technology, weapons, surveillance. This has to change. And in the city of Portland, you have this growing just animosity between the citizens that are policed and the police department. I mean, anywhere you go in Portland, you see all cops are bastards, ACAB, no good cops, anti-cop flyers, anti-cop graffiti. It's all over the city. And I'm sure most police officers, when they see Black Lives Matter signs, which are also everywhere in the city, When they see those, they see that as an attack, I'd imagine. And you don't want it to get to us. I was in Brazil in, I don't know, 2008, 2007, in Rio de Janeiro, and I remember thinking when I was there, I was like, this is America. This is where the United States is heading. It's like the United States, but a much more intense version of it, is what I thought at the time. You'd have these police organizations like the BOPE, B-O-P-E, driving around in these black armored cars with skull and crossbones logos on the sides of them. That was a police department in Rio. That is a police department. Skull and crossbones on the side of a black armored car. But this is a city where large swaths of it are completely ungoverned, improvised living structures. The favelas, they're called, of course. And these favelas, police do not enter them under any circumstances except as an incursion force, armed to the teeth with assault rifles, automatic weapons, guns. These are like commando raids that they do. And the kids, they're called traffickers, but they're, that's because they deal drugs at these things called the boca de fuma, the mouth of smoke. These are these little holes kind of in different areas around favelas where you can go buy drugs. Particularly, it's just pretty much marijuana and cocaine are the drugs that they supply to the city of Rio. And that's where a lot of the money comes in. I mean, the favelas are like cities unto themselves. There's full economies inside there of all kinds of businesses and whatnot. But I got to visit one favela, not one of the more notorious ones, but still, it's very interesting to walk around through it. And and the attitude towards the police in there is, they're just utterly, there is no commonality or respect whatsoever, to the point where, these kids would say that, if they caught a police officer apart from his group and they got him separated and could capture him in one of these street battles, what they do is they kill him, and often with torture. They will do the thing called necklacing, where they put a tire around the cop's neck and light it on fire with gasoline. So, when you think about like that reality, and then of course the cops kill more people, and they kill 1,000 people a year or more in the favelas. Those are just the cases about. I mean, the statistics, of course, I'm just pulling them out of my hat, but it's something along those lines. It's one of the most deadly places in terms of police violence in the industrialized world. So the parallels between the United States and Brazil, these are both countries with a lot of racism, a lot of, the slavery was a huge part of the history of the countries. And then you look at the parallels between Bolsonaro and Trump. We're both run by, Bolsonaro's maybe an ideological fascist. Trump's just an idiot, opportunist with fascistic tendencies, but he would use anything just for his own self-interest. But I don't need to explain who he is. But so there's a lot of parallels between the two. The coronavirus response, two of the very worst in the world, the two very worst in the world. And I guess what I'm thinking is, we don't want to get to that place where Brazil is, with the favelas. And you see it happening in America, this transition to a third world country that's happening. I mean, there's favelas growing all around us in the city, like in Portland. Every space between freeway on-ramps or, there's tent cities growing. You start to see structures getting built in certain areas, more kind of not quite permanent, but heading there. And you wonder, how long it's going to be till, what will America look like and the United States look like in 5 years, 2 years? I see a Rio type situation. Homelessness becoming, people aren't going to just go die. They need to live, and they're going to fight for areas where they can build favelas. They're already doing that. This is already happening. The police are becoming fully militarized death squads, you could say, in some places. Harassment squads. It's heading that direction, and it's not good for the people, and it's not good for the cops. Like I said, with the thing about, people will fight back, especially when you have nothing to lose. So why would we want to go that way? That's the thing that I just think. Obviously we don't want to. The people who are, the average American person doesn't want to go that route. I'd like to just get kind of compassionate and make this thing work for everyone. I think the billionaire class, doesn't really give a crap. As long as there's control of some kind and business can go on, who cares how people suffer? It's about the bottom line. It's about return for investment, return on investment for investors, But for the rest of us, we need to fight for a world that's decent and not just an endless war forever between the people and state power. I mean, why would we want that? It's not cool. It's not fun. Trying to think of, I had a thought of them. Just, what was it? God dang it. I really had a thought that was like a kind of summing up everything. Why would you want the world to turn into a favela? Why would you want fully militarized police? Why would you want it to be war forever? Oh well, whatever. This is a painting on paper. It's oil on paper. I treated the paper with gesso. I've been doing a lot of very fine brushwork on it. It's kind of a night scene. It's very nocturnal. Needs a little work. It's taped there, so there's going to be a clean edge on this thing, but taped it to some foam core. See this guy off to the side there on the left-hand side? There's a guy looking at a laptop, kind of holding it up. This flower fan thing coming off this house structure. There's some grain piled up. This stone-looking Structure to the side, a starry night sky. This one's approaching the finishing point. Not going to do too much more on it, but I'm liking where it's at now. I've gessoed a couple panels recently. Getting ready to do a few new paintings. I want to keep them real simple, composition-wise. Elegant. Less busy. Anyways, join us Saturdays, 6 p.m., Chapman Square, Portland, Wall of Artists. Create with your community. Let's do this.